Hello there, welcome back to the last video of the week, and this is top 10, not top 10, this was about sequels that ran out of ideas. I am not going to do Terminator films or Alien films or stuff like that. The films I've already covered, or Predator films, I've already covered those series. I'm not going to cover them. They've got good points and bad points, but I don't really want to cover them. I think they've still got life in them, even though they're pretty crushed at the moment. You know, it's like, plus I've already done videos on them, so I don't really want to cover them. This is more like series who actually have run out of gas pretty badly. I've done either terrible sequels or terrible series of sequels that are pretty atrocious and are worth talking about, because these are like the disastrous ways to run a franchise. I'm also not going to bother talking about the Hellraiser series because I haven't really watched some of the later sequels. You know, I love the early ones, but why bother putting yourself through that? So this is stuff I've kind of seen most of them, and I can speak with authority. So sometimes it's a series of films, sometimes it's just a film. It just depends, really. So I'm going to start off with the Death Race series, which I include the remake and then all its series, because there's only one good Death Race, that's Death Race 2000. That was the early 70s Georgia Corman produced film, Paul Bartel directed. It was wonderful, very dark humour, it's just beautiful film, it's wonderful to see, and it's the only good thing we've seen from that. They did a Statham remake that absolutely gutted everything that was good about the film, all the humour, all the character, everything, all the atmosphere. They took our cross-country massacre movie and made it into a film set in one prison, going round and round the same route again and again, giving more and more brutal things to do. They turned out all the lights, made everything dark and humourless, and then they continued to make more and more direct-to-video sequels from then on, in the same location again and again and again. Then at one point I went to South Africa and did it again and again and again. Now what's annoying, one of the reasons why this is only number 10 is I can enjoy these films even though they're terrible. So I can't be too hateful of them, I can't hate them too much, but they are a massive come down from the original, and they are terrible. It's just my pesky bad taste at work here. You know, I can't really defend them, but they allowed character actors to come in and get some work and make some money off really dodgy scripts, and they're enjoyable to watch, they're just not very good. Okay, next we go to the Mummy series. This is the Universal ones, and the reason that's involved because there was a perfect Boris Karloff Mummy movie, there was a perfect series of Hammer movies, and then they remade them as Stephen Sommers crap, and then they did sequels which were terrible, and more sequels and remakes, and they haven't had any ideas since the 1940s. The only time they did any ideas was in Hammer in the 70s and 60s and 70s, where they kind of had this idea of the Mummy's kind of locked in, so we'll do about who's interested in abusing the Mummy lore, and they did that as a setup, and they did some fun character stuff there. Then the Stephen Sommers film came out. The first one wasn't that bad, but it was still really stupid and really deadly for right on your nerves to try and get your good side. Brendan Fraser's the lead. They weren't that good. It wasn't that good, but it was still watchable. Then the sequel came out, and that was slow, boring, but you know, there was an annoying kid in it, and it just dragged on and on. Then the third one came out years later, Rob Cohen did it, Triple X movies, and it was really boring. It had Jet Li in it, and it made him look boring. Then they did Tom Cruise remake, which managed to do absolutely nothing with the premise, and actually was a rip-off of Life Force, a terrific Tobe Hooper mess. This is a series that just keeps on digging deeper and deeper into trash, and it's please stop, just go back to the Hammer and the early Universal films and have some grace to it and have some soul, and not this busy nonsense that just... They don't have any ideas, none of these new movies have ideas, they just take ideas from the old ones and expand them and make them really explosive and boring. And they rip off so much from Indiana Jones series and do that bad as well. So they managed to destroy Indiana Jones and Mummy movies in one fell swoop, which is quite astonishing. Now we go to the Highlander series, as number 8. Number 8, Highlander series, that's... One thing you can say about Highlander 2, one of its only virtues as a sequel, as it has too many ideas. Not all of them have been digested properly. Not all of them. It's got stuff about fascism and, you know, environmentalism and stuff. There's way too many ideas. But it has ideas. After that, there was no ideas because they went and remade the first one again and again and again to diminishing results. This choice goes to Isaac Dunn because I know how much of a fan he is of Highlander. And these movies are terrible, they're so boring, it's just the same movie again and again. Eventually Christopher Lambert insisted he was killed off so he didn't have to do any more. I think that was the fourth one. He did number 3, which was a remake of number 1, and after that he just lost all patience with it and thought, just kill me off please. And they brought the guy from the TV show. So the TV show as well, redoing the same idea again and again. Highlander has remade this idea so many times and there is no clue what it wants to do with it. It's quite astonishing. And now they're doing another remake. The guy did John Wick's. Hopefully they've got some new ideas, but boy, there's no ideas in this series. I mean, the first film's a lot of fun, campy fun. Second one's a notorious mess, but at least it was a mess. I was like, well, that's interesting how far they went wrong. But since then, they've been so scared. They've gone wrong by not doing anything new. Number 7 is the Crow series. Now you probably remember the Brandon Lee one where he died on set, where he died the last few days of shooting. It was made by Alex Proyas and it was a really enjoyable film. It was really well made. Despite the tragedy, the kind of darkness of the whole thing, it had some good actors, it had a good villain, Michael Wincott. Brandon Lee was terrific in the lead. Even though they're doing an exploitation movie, they gave it some heart and they tried their best to make it subtle and worthy of what happened on set. They really tried and it was a wonderful film. Then the sequels came and the sequels are jaw-dropping. I mean 2 and 3 should be almost number 1 on this list for how bad they are. Because the second one kills the one character comes back from the first one in a gratuitous way that is not needed. It has a Crow that is boring as hell. It's a French actor, Vince Perez, and he didn't have nothing to do. It's not like his fault, it's boring. He's trying. It's just, there's no script. And the visuals are so over the top that it's... But it's so boring at the same time. They're just dull, doomed city. It's called City of Angels and it's best placed in LA and it's boring. Nothing happens interesting throughout the film. You're just watching it going, will something please happen that I can watch? Would something happen please? Nothing happens. It is. You think there's no way you can go worse than this. When I saw it, I thought there's no way. Then I had to do another process. Well, it can't be worse than the second one. The second one is... Then the third one came out, and the third one's even worse than the second one. The third one is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's terrible. It's called Salvation. And it's the biggest sin, it's boring. It's boring. The Crow in this one is boring. The Kirsten Dunst in it, and she looks bored to tears. Fred Ward's in it, he looks bored to tears. There's no story, there's no nothing. It takes place at a strip club for a lot of it, and it's boring. It actually makes you nostalgic for the second one, because the second one was way over the top visually, but at least it was visually interesting, if repetitive. This one is tedium, where it's like a sense of no one cares, and it feels like you're getting a lot of repeated shots and a lot of I don't know what to do with this type of thing from the director. It's excruciating to watch. It's so awful. It's the worst thing in the world. It's, you know, but the fourth one's actually not bad. You'd think I'd give up with 3, but the fourth one actually has a decent cast. They cut the budget to almost nothing, But because they didn't have much of a budget, they had to actually hire some actors to play the stuff and actually have some scenes. Lance Bunga directed this fourth one. He cast Edward Furlong as the Crow, who does not look like a crow at all. And that's the point of the film, which actually makes it interesting to see, because they hire him as a guy who is a convicted murderer. Because before the Crow was always this victim who was innocent and who was killed and has to come back and get revenge and against a character. This one, no, he's killed someone by mistake. Everyone hates him. He doesn't look like Crow at all. He's not buffed up in any way. So it makes a different feel. He knows the people who killed him. The people who killed him and his girlfriend did it, and they knew him. They were doing this satanic thing. And he has complicated relationships with them. David Boreanaz from Angel is the villain. And he's not bad either. He's not great, but he's not bad. Dennis Hopper shows up. Danny Trejo's there. And it's just enjoyable. It's not a great movie, but it's enjoyable. It's some nice acting scenes. It's not, because they don't have money for the action, they have to resort to an acting idea of having a crow who's done bad things and who feels guilt over his bad deeds and is trying to make up for his bad deeds as well as get revenge, and it's just better made. It's actually this was under the Weinsteins at this point. I think they just left the director to get on with it, and he did what he wanted, and there's some nice scenes in it about people dealing with mistakes they made. It's still a genre film. It's still not great, but it's way better than it should have been. So that's why The Crow is not at number one for this list. Cause Wicked Prayer is actually not bad. It's not great, but it's not, compared to the other last two sequels before that, it's a bloody miracle. So anyway, that's The Crow. Now we have a single film, The Exorcist: The Beginning. Now the reason this is on here is, I know Exorcist sequels are badly viewed by lots of people, but not by me. I like a lot of the sequels. I like the sequels better than some of the original in a lot of cases, because I like how weird they get. Because it's almost like we can't do anything with this, so let's go really weird. So this is, to me, is a good way of doing a sequel. That's why this is in the list, mainly because it's a good way to say, this is how you can avoid this, by just going crazy with Exorcist 2, Exorcist 3, two really weird films. Then having Paul Schrader do Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist, which is a very weird, interesting film. It was then remade as Exorcist: The Beginning because the studio hated it and wanted a mainstream film, and made one of the worst films ever. Rennie Harlin's in to direct it. This is so boring. It's like it even messes with the mythology of the original Exorcist by having this. His idea of scary is on upside down crosses. That's his idea of scary. It has Stellan Skarsgård looking like shoot me now type of look throughout the film, because he's already shot this film once before. Now he's been brought back to redo it. It's got the nurse in it who is meant to be the boy who's possessed. It turns out the boy's not possessed, it's a nurse. Even though we've been told in the original Exorcist it was an exorcism of a boy. So they completely ignore that. But they just throw in so much gore and needless viciousness and horribleness, and it's just a nasty movie. It's a nasty, nasty movie. It's a film I left feeling really upset after watching it, because it was so terrible and so inhumane and just so bereft of any humanity. This is a hateful movie. This is so terrible. You know, especially after when you see the Schrader version, it's like, you can maybe not like the Schrader version, but at least it was a version made by a director. This one is like, even though it says it's a Rennie Harlin film, I don't know how much he had to do with this. You get feeling even he was like overstepped a little bit. And I'm not a defender of Rennie Harlin. This feels like a studio saying, do this, do that. That's too subtle, do this instead. It's a terrible film. Oh boy, that's terrible. Okay, next is The Hobbit. This whole series of the Hobbit series, just the whole thing, piece of crap. Well, actually, the reason I'm bringing it is, this is how you could put the Star Wars prequels on here, the Star Wars sequels from Disney, but but they have their defenders, and they have moments that are actually... I mean, the prequels have their problems, so do these sequels, but they all have bits and bobs that are defendable. The Hobbit, I kind of don't know how you defend Hobbit. Hobbit's like... what's worse in this list is because it's made by a talented director who... I don't know what the hell is going on. It's so boring. 3 films. I mean, the only one I find kind of watchable is the second one, because it's not bad, it's not terrible. It's just less boring than other ones, even though there's multiple problems with it. It's like multiple problems, but it's still more watchable than the first or third one, which just feel like a director throwing special effects at you to make up for the fact that he does not want to be there. Peter Jackson was not meant to direct these films. When Del Toro dropped out because of some of the delays, Jackson took over, and then the films were extended from 2 to 3, and you feel when you watched it that there's lots of scenes have been extended to make the runtime, make up the runtime, and they've been extended well beyond their important story. And you've got lots of scenes of people walking around that have no direction, that have no reason for being. And it's a film, it's just like excruciating watching a good director being crushed by this whole thing. You can sense it's so untypical of Peter Jackson filmmaking, this one. This feels so... Even the scenes in the third one where he gets to do bigger action scenes, he forgets to have character moments in it a lot of the time, and it's like almost like, I can't be bothered anymore, just shoot me. It's in this because I actually feel bad for the director of this one, because I don't think all this was his fault, because it's a director I like a lot, and this one is a disaster, and it's like, what happened? This is like I guess one of those films, there was little hints in the... I did rewatch some on DVD and Blu-ray, and you saw some of the makings of, and saw there was signs of trouble. But I'm sure there's even worse tales to tell of this one. This is one of those ones, kind of like the Justice League movie, where you think there's a lot of... there's a lot of tales not told yet. So that one is... Next is the Halloween series. Halloween, apart from Halloween 1 and Halloween 3, and I quite like the new one, the David Gordon Green one. I don't mind his Rob Zombie stuff either, because at least it's trying something different, so it can't be categorised as being boring, but it's trying something different. Anyone wants to try something different, like Halloween 3, the Rob Zombie ones, is fine. And if you do the years later thing that they did with New Halloween, I think that's fine, because it was well made, maybe a good director who cared. But what I'm talking about is Halloween 2, 4, 5, 6, H2O, The Resurrection, all this stuff, utter garbage, nothing interesting in them at all. They don't care about anything. It's just, they're boring. It's just stock and slash without any care for characters. And stock and slash without characters is boring. And Halloween, which had the best stock and slash in the first one because it was about the characters and the atmosphere, went to a series with no atmosphere, no characters, no nothing. It was boring. And that's why it's a list. It's defamed a classic film by making so many terrible sequels. And it has my contempt for that. Except for the ones I've just mentioned, the ones I quite like. Those ones, even though the Rob Zombie ones are very flawed, at least they tried something different. So Halloween series, oh God, so depressing, because I love the first one so much as well, which makes it even worse. The same way the Hobbit thing, where I really like Lord of the Rings series, is like, you know, why you do this? We're now in the top 3, and this one is for SGS Films. Lethal Weapon series. I'm specifically talking about Lethal Weapon 3 and 4. First Lethal Weapon's a good film, written by Shane Black. It's well cast, well made. It's a really good film. Even though you've got problems with Mel Gibson now, no, quite a few of us are not big fans of him. Lethal Weapon 2 is a well made sequel. It was partially written by Shane Black, partially written by the guy who did Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was a rewrite of a script that Shane Black wrote. It has some silly moments, Joe Pesci stuff, but it's still an enjoyable film. It's still well made. Some of the plot doesn't hang together that great, but it's still a well made film. But the next two, oh boy. These are examples of badly made studio trash. I've been trying to kind of have a good mix of films here, but this is like, what's annoying is people still think they're good films and they're not. They're really shoddily made. They have plot developments there that are just there to because the director felt like it. Like, it's not for plot reasons. Like, they get busted down to uniforms for a bit, then put back up. Just because the director wanted to do that. You've developed plots lots back and forward. There's a terrible villain who's really boring. There's a boring finale in this like construction site. It's basically, it went from being something that was edgy to the second one, which was about family growing together of these disparate people. That was fine. This one's a sitcom. And there's a lot of sitcom scenes and it's tedious to watch, and it's... Because I remember I really liked the first two when they came out. Then this, when I saw the third one, I was like, well, this is over. This is terrible. This is so terrible. And so dull, because you know, you're sitting watching an action movie and you're thinking, God, what's going on? Well, I don't care. Why is Mel Gibson suddenly a total dick in these films? Before he became a dick in real life. And then the fourth one came out, and the fourth one is just so fragmented. It kind of feels like they didn't have a script. It has a one good sequence in it, which is on the back of a truck, and a chase sequence on this like moving mobile home thing. That's it. That's all it's got. The rest of the time, with Jet Li, another one with Jet Li's brought into American films and wasted. It's got all these stuff about immigrants that is hammered home with no subtlety, and it's just boring. It's just like, it's just so brain dead, and again it's a sitcom, and with all these sitcom stories of these different people and all these painful comedy sequences that it's just terrible. It's so tedious, so much of it. And this one wins out over Die Hard series for Die Hard series fall as well, because I don't know, I think Die Hard at least had a good run to... I'm not sure, I think I like Die Hard series more, even though that last one. This one is just, these last two sequels are so lazy, so uninspired, so contemptible to the audience. They just hate the audience. I made a joke to SES likes these films. I really have a big problem with the went. I'm joking. This is not really for SES films. But these ones really annoy me, these sequels, because it was like, I just think they were contempt for the audience. And I was the audience, and I really felt let down the last two. In a way that you don't usually get let down, but you just feel like these people making this film have utter contempt for me. So that's number 3. That's Lethal Weapon. Okay, coming in number 2 is Speed 2 Cruise Control. This is Jean de Bont's follow-up to Speed, a wonderful Keanu Reeves movie where Keanu Reeves turned the sequel down because the script was shit. And they made the script anyway, and it was absolutely appalling to watch. And it's one of my favourite disaster bad movies now because it's so wrong in every way. It's basically, if you want to see a good Bomb on a Boat movie, watch Juggernaut, which is a terrific movie. If you want a bad one, watch Speed 2, because Speed 2 is terrible. And it mishandles every suspense sequence. You know, it doesn't understand suspense, even though the first one did, which is weird. Everything's mistimed, the characters are so broad and annoying, but it's tedious throughout, and there's all these sequences of this boat going really slow in the water, and you're meant to thinking it's intimidating, but it's not. And then they've got good ideas what they do badly. There's a bit where Jason Patrick has to go into a boat to actually destroy the propellers to stop the boat moving, to stop it, the threat of the bomb in any way. It's sure and scary. It was like a really good idea for a sequence, and it's done boring. Right. There's a sequence where the boat rams into a town. Should be good. It's overpaced so badly that there's so many bad jokes in it, it's terrible to watch. There's a bit where a boat has to avoid ramming into a oil tanker. This big cruise line has to avoid hitting an oil tanker, and you have to do something underwater to change the direction of the boat. And that should be suspenseful. It's not. Nothing works. Oh, nothing works. And one of the big reasons is they don't have a lead man. Jason Patrick's a good actor, but he's stuck with a dead script and he can't elevate it. And he looks from his expression in his face, he looks depressed to be there. He realises he's in a bomb. And because they never worked at the script to make the reasons why they're doing these things interesting, nor did they have any character stuff. And Willem Dafoe goes way over the top as a villain, but that's a good thing because that's the only thing that's watchable in this whole film. So that's number 2, and you think after number 2, how can be a worse film, worse sequel, less idea sequel than that? Very easily, you make Pacific Rim 2. That's now number 1. This is called Uprising, and this pretty much seems to be made by people who hate the first film. Because Pacific Rim for me is... Now this is a completely emotional choice, that's for number 1. Objectively, I know some of these films are much worse than this. But this is my emotional choice. Because the first film, Pacific Rim, I adore Pacific Rim. It's flawed, yeah. It's silly, yeah. Who cares? It's Del Toro doing Del Toro giant monsters versus giant robots fight. All the actors are game, they all know what they're doing. The characters are cliched, but they're moving. And the film works, and it's got some great sequences, and it's so enjoyable. This sequel hates it, it seems. It has a TV plot, it replaces the lead man, Charlie Hunnam changes it, didn't want to do it. You know, very ready script. You know, just saying. He went and did some good films rather than do this. The script's terrible. The leading lady from the first one's in it for like 10 minutes, then she gets killed off, and a totally gratuitous thing where you think, just don't use her in the film if you're going to use her like that. You're going to make us absolutely hate what happened because she was so important to the first film, then you basically kill her off in a gratuitous sequence. That's not the only way you do in a sequel. Unless you have a reason for killing some people off, don't do it. Then the Charlie Day character in the original turned out to be the villain in this one, even though he was a fun character in the first one, he was an audience figure in the first one. You don't do that either. And John Boyega tries as a new lead man. He plays Idris Elba's character's son, who was Idris Elba was in the first one. He tries his best, but no matter what he does, cannot help this is a boring film with a tedious plot, terrible action scenes. It feels like a TV movie. And it just seems to hate the first one and seems to think it's doing better than the first one even though it's terrible. It's objectively terrible. It's... I would leave it there. Right. That's me for now. I'll be back next week for some more. But I better go before I start ranting with that film. Right, bye for now. I'll see you later.